topic tonight of health and wealth was so important because in the Black and brown community, it's a taboo to talk about those things. Mental illness, talking about depression and suicide, and most importantly, how does one get wealthy?
Love our partnership with the Catalyst Network Foundation, where we partner with them on the Meeting of the Minds events, such as the one tonight, which is focusing on health as well. And we're excited to include health as not only mental and physical health, but also financial health and career success as a broader topic.
At Aetna, we believe you don't join us, we join you. We don't believe in just help people that are sick, but also being part of their wellness journey. And this event tonight really speaks to that.
Today I will be speaking about mental health and well-being, in particular as it relates to people of color.
I'm really thrilled to be here at the Meeting of the Minds panel so I can discuss the idea of ending stigma in our community, something that I'm extremely passionate about.
The true importance of events like this are bringing together civil society. So these panel discussions, and especially partnering with the Catalyst Network, it's a critical endeavor for us, for areas that we feel that we may have an affinity with other groups.
Thomas and I, my husband, are the owners of Sterling Motor Cars. We also have a foundation that provides scholarships to students in the Northern Virginia area. We've given over $1.5 million in scholarship aid to families, aid to colleges and universities. We are excited to be a part of this community.
What the Catalyst Foundation is doing is addressing some educational needs and social needs of the community, and so it's important for Aetna to sponsor events such as this because we're getting at the local level and we're participating.
Thank you for having us. We're happy to be a sponsor for, this is actually our inaugural sponsorship for Catalyst Network, and their mission and vision falls in line with what Kaiser Permanente believes in, and that's the total health of our community. So not just the total health of the members that are Kaiser Permanente members, but our communities. So we give back by investing in the areas of healthcare access, food, desert spaces. We look at healthy eating and active living, and we also highly invest in college and career readiness and workforce development. So we're really excited to hear about the mentoring programs that are happening within the Catalyst Network, and we're happy to be here. So thank you for having us.
Thank you, thank you. On behalf of Aetna, we have Iluka Ifudu.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. My name is Iluka Ifudu. I'm marketing manager with Aetna. This is actually a very exciting evening, exciting time in healthcare. At Aetna, we really believe that you don't join us, we join you. And events like this kind of speak volume to what's going on in our community. I believe this is an exciting time around healthcare. It's all about personalization. So if you don't know what's going on in the community, you can't really address the issue. And I really applaud the Catalyst Network for taking the initiative to put on a fantastic event. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Is Richard, president of NSBE DC, here tonight? We want to acknowledge them as one of our sponsors. Samuel Gordon, Association of Black Psychologists Representative. Kirsten Roper, she is the president of the Spelman chapter. Erica Roberts, Black MBA president. Say a few words. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? I'm Erica Roberts. I'm the president of the Washington, D.C. chapter of the National Black MBA Association. We have a mission to advance intellectual and economic wealth amongst African Americans. So we are just delighted to partner with Catalyst yet again on this topic of health is wealth, and recognizing that it's not just mental and physical, but also financial wealth. So I want to encourage all of you to continue to support them, and thank you for those that already donated, as well as us. So if you are interested in financial wealth, economic development, career development, please check out our website at dcblackmba.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Which, by the way, Erica helped me out earlier. She's the one that put this mic together for me. Thank you. Next, on behalf of AABE, we have Tracy Woods.
Trey, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Tracy Woods with the American Association of Blacks in Energy. And we are a 2,000-member organization, 40 years in existence, 41 years as a matter of fact. And we do energy policy advocacy. So the way I like to describe it, everybody receives some sort of energy bills, probably one or two at home, electric and gas. But we're not really sure what's in there. Our organization advocates for energy policy in communities of color. We have a conference coming up, a national conference, Las Vegas, first week in August. First week in May 1st through the 4th, and invite you to come to our website, check it out. And if you're interested in innovation in energy, many things are changing in the energy sphere, come check us out at the conference, and then just in general, to understand what energy policy is and impacts on communities of color, come check out ABE. Thank you, Trey.
Thanks, Tracy. Next, on behalf of the network, Thursday Network, we have Derek Petit.
I guess I'll do Washington Bars. Oh, yeah. Okay. Hi, you guys. My name is Derek Petit. I am a member of Thursday Network, which is the young. Somebody. Oh, I thought somebody knew it. Somebody's part of it. Okay, that's good. I'm a Baptist. I like to hear the amens. Okay. So Thursday Network is the young professional affiliate of the Greater Washington Urban League, and we are in the community as far as health, housing, education, and advocacy, and that's a huge part. I used to be civic engagement chair. Currently, Thursday Network has an open house tonight, so I'm here representing. I'm also here with the Washington Bar Association, which is the oldest black lawyers association in the country, with an affiliate with the National Bar Association, and we're also here to support. And I just formed a new organization, basically, which is the Gay Professional Men of Color, which is a big part of DC as far as, of course, gay men have that health issue as well and the finances. So a number of organizations here to support Catalyst and Trey's vision. Thank you.
Thanks, Derek. Next, we do have Oscar Martis on behalf of NSBE DC.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome here tonight. NSBE is the National Society of Black Engineers. We're here as a new sponsor, or at least a new partner with these folks. We actually partner with Black MBA, and I'm a member of Black MBA as well. And we thank you all for coming tonight and hope you get a lot of information that can help you, because we're looking at health and wellness programs within our own chapter to deliver to our members.
Thank you, Oscar. So I have a few other sponsors and partners that I do want to speak and mention. If you are here and you do want to say something on behalf of your organization, please definitely come down. We have the Harvard Black Alumni Association. Thank you. Can we clap for them? We have 100 Black Men of Prince George's County. The Yale Black Alumni Association. GWAC. The Washington chapter of the National Hampton Alumni Association. Go Pirates. The Morehouse College Alumni. And Derek spoke on behalf of them earlier, Howard University Alumni Club. Go Pirates. There we go. There we go. If I missed any of our strategic partners, I apologize, but we do appreciate all of your support. Thank you. So now, I will introduce our panelists for tonight's discussion. Starting off to my left, we have Dr. Maislyn Christie. She is a pediatrician at Aetna.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's really good for me to be here representing Aetna, and we're a healthcare company, and what Catalyst is doing. is really part of what Aetna wants to do in terms of making healthcare human care. I'm a graduate from Howard University undergrad and medical school. I did my residency at Children's Hospital. I've been in private practice, and I've been with Aetna for the last 8 years. Good to be here.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Nikki Weber-Allen. I am a television producer, a filmmaker, and I just launched a nonprofit last year called the I Live For Foundation, and our mission is to end mental health stigma in communities of color. And I focus on millennials, and storytelling is our means for tackling stigma.
Hi, everybody. My name is Keisha Mack. I'm a clinical psychologist with the Mecca Group, LLC, based here in D.C. My business partner, Mercedes Ebanks, and my staff are here. Thank you, guys, for coming out. And we are a psychological and rehabilitative services consulting firm, and we have private practice, but we also do a lot of work within charter schools. And our primary focus is on people of color, kids of color, family of color, and just along with you, reducing the stigma and making sure that they receive good mental health care.
Good evening. My name is Michael Cobb. I'm a CPA. I work in a firm called Bazilio Cobb Associates. We're an old-fashioned CPA firm where we provide accounting, finance, and tax services. I'm in charge of the tax department, so I spend my time doing taxes from here on out. So I'm glad to be here tonight.
Thank you. Thank you all. So tonight we're going to dive into something that is a taboo in the Black and brown community, talking about mental health, mental illness, talking about depression, and the biggest thing, suicide. And then another thing, too, we don't talk about finances enough at the dinner table with our families. So we're going to dive into some pre-selected questions that we have. But after that, I would like to get some audience participation and a few questions from you all. But to start off, first question, what are some causes of depression? What are some ways that we can approach those symptoms? And lastly, what should we do to help people out in that situation?
Okay, I start. With regard to causes of depression, you can look at that from different perspectives. 40% of people have a hereditary. There's some hereditary portion of why they are experiencing depression. But then a lot for people of color, that goes back to slavery and, disproportionate economics and systemic racism and those kinds of things, which result in stressors that, the minority may not experience to the same degree. And so then you have this long-standing depression. And depression also, there's some misconceptions about what depression really is. There's most people have situations where they experience the blues. We feel down. Once you reach clinical depression, that's very different because then you're talking about your the brain chemistry, and that changes. And then there's things that you have really very little control over as a result of your brain chemistry actually changing. So then there are, some of the symptoms that are a result are lack of motivation, sadness, crying for no reason, inability to focus, difficulties either sleeping too much or not getting enough sleep, eating more, eating a lot less, gaining weight, losing weight, fatigue, just anhedonia, just not enjoying things that you used to enjoy in life. All of these things are a result of being clinically depressed. And one of the ways to treat depression, and we've all heard this, is therapy. Another way to treat depression at the clinical level, which is again very different from just having the blues, could also be medications. And research shows that therapy along with medication is the best approach to treating depression.
Thank you. So let's stay there and let's talk about some of the stigmas that are around mental illness in our community.
So one of the major barriers to treatment within the Black community is stigma. Research indicates that 63% of Black Americans believe that depression is actually just a sign as weakness or a sign, like a personal character flaw. Overwhelmingly, we don't believe that it's an actual medical condition, which it is. It's a medical condition that needs to be treated by a professional. Ways, though, to tackle the stigma. I actually have, as I mentioned, my nonprofit, the I Live For Foundation. We're tackling stigma through storytelling. I think that's one of the most impactful ways to tackle the stigma is to have people who have life experience living with depression to talk about their experience openly. So I am an example of someone who lives with depression and anxiety disorder. I actually, in my family, my nephew, who is 22 years old, struggled with clinical depression, very severe depression, and we actually lost him to suicide. This is a kid who had everything going for him, had a full 4-year academic scholarship to Morehouse College, and anybody who went to an HBCU knows HBCUs don't give scholarships. They just don't have the money for that, right? So that shows you this kid was off the charts smart. You know, he just had everything going for him, but he struggled with this illness. I bring this up because he didn't really talk about it openly. He was ashamed because of the stigma. At the same time, I was struggling. I didn't talk to him about my experience because I was ashamed because of the stigma. And so that is why I've dedicated my life now to trying to tackle this within our communities. So I've put together a documentary film and a storytelling campaign to show other people that look like us, that look like the people in this room. Because what we don't realize, I don't think most of us realize, is because of the stigma, many of us don't get the help that we need. But but the issue is that we're 20% more likely than our white counterparts to actually struggle with a mental health disorder because of things like that Keisha already mentioned, because of the racism and socioeconomic disparities and things like that. So we've got to talk about it. People who live with it have to be more open about it so that other people can see commonality, and we talk about our experience, and getting treatment from people who understand our culture is just so incredibly important. But the more we talk about it, we can openly, we can really tackle the stigma.
Yeah. Excellent point. Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to kind of piggyback on what Ms. Weber was just speaking on. I too have a history of clinical depression. And I'm very open with it with my friends. I talk to them all the time. We talk about therapy like we're going to get our nails done. You know, girl, when you going to therapy? You know, and we talk about it, and that's how we have to approach it. But in our communities, we don't do that. So I'm very open with sharing that I experienced clinical depression. I'm no longer experiencing it, but there was a time in my life where there was a significant depression, and I also did therapy for a long time. And in addition to therapy, I did medication for a long time. You know, we have to erase that stigma related to medication. Now, I do know that we are overly medicated. We have a history of being, you know, utilized in ways that were not, you know, ethically appropriate for studies and things like that. But when it's necessary, it's necessary. If you have heart disease, you're going to take your meds. If you have cancer, you're going to get your chemo. If you have depression, you need to take your antidepressants. And that's what I did, and I no longer have to take them. It's not something that you have to do forever because I'm here and I'm no longer taking antidepressants. But it's something that we just have to make sure that we share and tell that story and let people know that this is the face of depression. This is the face of depression, and I'm fine.
Thank you. And let's stay right there. So there is a stigma. We're all saying that that's true, and it is taboo in our community. What are some best practices people can do to open up to one another? I mean, Dr. Mack, you had a great point in regards to it's like therapy. You just naturally do that. But for the people it's not natural for, what are some things that they can do?
I think a very important thing is to maintain social connections. And your wealth is really measured as you go along in life as to the people that you can connect with. And you really have to have those one or two persons that you can be vulnerable with and just tell your story. And we all have a story. And it's just to find that safe person that you can be open and honest with. So I think that's a big thing.
And that's so important. And that person may not be a family member. I just want to put that out there. Because oftentimes, I know, and not to out my mom, but when I first told my mom I was going to therapy, her response was, they always blame the mothers. Like, she was so concerned. And I realized, okay, don't talk to her about that anymore. But, you know, just be mindful that you're speaking to someone who's going to be receptive to what you have to say, you know, because there are people that just don't get that. And that's okay. But just seek out the people that you know will be open to your story and be supportive.
Thank you, thank you. And tonight we're going to be switching back and forth between health and wealth, and I don't want to keep Mr. Cobb out. So the next question is going to go to the financial side. What is your definition of financial security, and then also how does one get there?
Thank you. Well, that's kind of a sliding scale. Usually, I mean, the rule of thumb for short-term security, to put a number on it, is to have 3 months of cash or 3 months of living expenses tucked away in a liquid account that you can get to. So I think that's the very first step. I mean, financial security is easy to say. You know, you just save. I mean, those words are easy to say, but hard to do. I remember when I first started at Pete Mark years ago, and they first started off with a 401k plan, and it started jumping in at 12%. I jumped in at 2%. You know, my philosophy is do something is better than doing anything. And then a couple of years later, I was at 4% or 6% of your savings. And then 5 years later, I was wondering why I didn't jump in at 12% right away. And there's nothing exotic about saving money. It's corny to say, and it's kind of self-serving, but you just have to start. And that's how the financial security starts. You have to set your priorities. And again, if I'd have jumped in at 12% right away, I'd have been better off than starting off at 2%. I kind of advise my clients, start somewhere and do it on a regular basis. I know we're going to be talking about dieting and exercise and all that. Same philosophy. Start. You know, it sounds easy. It is easy. But you just have to start. Same thing for finance, the same thing with your health, same thing with exercising. Start somewhere, and that's the beginning.
So we're going to stay right there with starting, and you know, some people just don't have that literacy and know exactly what to do. Are there some things out there that you can tell people to go and get or provide that would help them be able to start?
Well, I mean, in today's environment, there's all types of news. There's all types of we're inundated with things to do, and a lot of times I tell clients and friends, don't overthink it. Don't outsmart yourself. Oh, I want to do this. I want these kind of trusts. I want that. No. Put a little bit of money in the bank. Put 2% away. If you're not putting money into your 401k, then you shouldn't be thinking about doing anything else exotic. You don't need to do any exotic types of investments. And I tell people that are selling these kind of investments, if the person is talking too fast, and if you don't understand what they're saying, then don't do it. As a Washingtonian, I'm a Doug Williams guy, and Doug always had a saying that he was a CD guy. You just put your money in a CD. It's not exotic, but you put your money in a CD and you won't lose it. It's insured. The rates of return don't sound as good or as exotic as some type of airplane tax shelter they used to have years ago that have been outlawed. But start with a CD. Start with the 2%. There is a psychological component in what I do also, from a tax point of view. I tell people that are delinquent with their taxes, if you wait, everybody has all the information to do taxes by now. And if you wait, all that's going to happen is you're going to lose something. So get your stuff together, and whether you need a CPA or an HR block, or you can go online yourself, start. It's a simple concept. Start with your finances, start with your health, start with your physical well-being, the same way.
Thank you. If you all leave here with one thing, it's start. Make sure y'all start. Appreciate it. We're going to switch back now. So, genetics is really big in regards to mental illness and then just how things work. So, next question is, how might personal genetics influence how a person's body uses and accepts nutrients?
So the exciting thing is that we do know that depending on where your genetic background is from, and genetic testing is really a big thing now, and we're looking at it in terms of how each person, depending on what part of the world you're from, how your body metabolizes caffeine, how it metabolizes alcohol. And so genetic testing is getting a lot cheaper. And so I think in the future, what most of us are going to probably do is to find out where our genetic background is, and then we'll have the research to identify where we're from and what kinds of foods we're supposed to be eating or not eating. There's a fascinating book, some of you might know about it. It's Eating for Your Blood Type. And there's it's specific and it's real. So sometimes when you can't lose the weight, sometimes when you can't get started, it's based in your genes. So genetic testing, as I said, will be a commonplace in the future.
And is there any correlation between what you eat and mental illness?
Gut health is mental health. And so the studies have shown that what you're eating, there's a familiar saying, you are what you eat. And so what you put in your body, there are certain illnesses that it's based on deficiency in certain minerals and vitamins and micronutrients that we're not getting. We're getting the carbs and the protein and the fat, but we're not getting the magnesium and the zinc and the amino acids in the right amount. So yes, it's very important as to what you put in your body, as to how you think, your mood, and I'm sure Dr. Mack can speak a lot more to that.
Absolutely. There are a lot of research that does support what you're eating, and also not only what you're eating, but also physical activity and exercise. The runner's high is real. One of the things that we recommend for people who are depressed is to exercise and to eat right, because those things actually do have a major impact. That's like part of the prescription of depression: exercise, eat right. So absolutely.
Let's stay there with food, and specifically with the mind. What are some specific foods that would help with brain health and then also prevent dementia?
So on the top of our list are our green leafy vegetables, so our kale and collard greens and broccoli and spinach, those things, nuts, olive oil, fish, if you can tolerate fish, poultry, and wine, in moderation, of course. Right? Red wine in particular. So, yes, in moderation, as usual. Yes.
What is moderation?
Well, there are charts. I can't rattle it off, but there are charts that you could go and look. If you're a woman, it's 1 to 2 glasses. If you're a man, you can probably tolerate a little bit more. But, well, there is a whole list of, whether you're drinking this kind of wine or you're drinking hard liquor or something. But there are charts out there that you could do. But as always, everything in moderation. And there are certain foods that we need to avoid. So fatty foods in particular, red meat in particular, in moderation. So these are some things. So red meat, cheeses are one of the things that could help hasten dementia. And so we know that obesity is a big piece, and there are some studies that came out that shows that the more obese a person is, it increases their likelihood for a dementia in the future. So.
Thank you. Switching back, so passive income is important, but how do we get there? We know we need to start, we know that, but what are some ways to get into a passive income vehicle, and then how important is it?
Well, I think passive income is a technical term. I like to call it investment income. You know, your interest, your dividends, and you receive those types of investment income through investments. Through the easiest thing for people who are just getting started are mutual funds. You can easily access that through your job or through your bank, and that's how you start with a mutual fund. And the mutual fund pays interest, it pays dividends. That's passive income. That's investment income, and that's what you want. You want that. You want that kind of income. You don't want to be living. You want to be able to save part of your salary, and the more you can put away, the more passive income, the more investment type income that you would have.
So right there, you need to have a plan in place. What are some ways to put a plan in place and stick to it? So a budget. What are some best practices that you can provide?
The best thing you can do with a budget is write it down on a piece of paper. You know, you're thinking about it. I know if you're trying to do your checkbook and you always have less money than you think. But if you write it down, put everything down, look at your bills that you paid. I mean, everything is easier now electronically. Your credit cards, your bank statements are all electronic. But don't do it in your head. Just write it down, whether you want to do it, on a computer or some type of Excel spreadsheet or whatever. It doesn't have to be that complicated. Take a legal pad and take a pen and write it down. You know, and when you write everything down, invariably you will surprise yourself at what you're spending money on. And once you see what you're spending money on, not what you think you're spending money on, what you know that you're spending money on. And when any type of budget or any type of financial plan, you cannot do it mentally. You cannot do it intuitively. It's just arithmetic. Put the numbers down on a piece of paper. It's the same. Most people have the same bills every month. You write them down, but what people are doing, you forget. You forget that you went out. You forget that you bought dinner. You ate out twice during the course of the week. You forget that. It may be, you know, when your kids are come and gone, when you're on a stricter budget because you're going to the grocery store all the time, you lose sight of that because maybe it's not quite as important. But still, you're spending money. Money is sort of evaporating because you thought you had something and you didn't think you spent that much when in fact you did. So what I would say is something simple. You don't need to be an Excel guru. I asked my son to help me with Excel and he told me, oh, it's too late for you. I said, what do you mean? Right, he said, it's too late, you know. But I do have a bunch of legal pads, you know, and I got some staff. But you'd be surprised when you write down money's coming in, when you write down the money that has actually left your pocket and left the household, that's where you start.
Thank you. In times of trouble, we tend, and we being the brown and black communities, turn to church. So what can religious communities do to promote mental health and speak about depression?
Speak about it, like you just said. I mean, absolutely. That's exactly what they need to do. Church, spirituality, all that plays a significant role in mental health and well-being. However, it's very important that we also understand that, you know, God put things in place so that you can heal. Doctors and therapists and everything in between so that, you know, you can heal in a way that your pastor cannot do for you. I'm fortunate enough to go to a church where the pastor is always speaking about get some therapy. He said he will tell you in a minute, don't come to me. I can't help you. You know, he will say get therapy. And I think it's very important for this to be a regular message in the church because people listen, black and brown people, like you say, we listen to our pastors. We listen to our pastors and their guidance. And if they're guiding us in that way, more of us will likely follow in that way. And churches, I think it's important for churches to have some form of not just pastoral counseling, but also having mental health counseling within their walls, you know, and supporting that outside in the community that they service. So it's something that I think they can do more of, and I think if they did more of, it would definitely help with reducing the stigma and increasing our willingness to participate in therapy, talk about going to therapy, and mental health in general.
So let's do that. Let's speak about it. I'm going to come out to the audience. I would love to get some of your questions answered. So does anyone have any questions right now that they would like to ask our panelists?
So before I started practicing law, I was a teacher. And one of my biggest issues has always been the overdiagnosis of students. And I taught in an urban area, hard time. You know, that hard time urban area where everybody seemed like they were on medicine. And I'm trying to figure out, is there something, and I don't know which one of you can speak to this, being done about, one, over-diagnosing students, over-medicating students, and then, of course, when the students get older and they lose that issue, then, of course, they may go to drugs and things like that. And so is there something that's supposed to be done when you medicate a child? I believe there should be an idea of behavioral therapy that goes with that. And so is there some type of standard that these doctors in the neighborhoods that I was teaching in are missing?
Well, this is what I do every day. You know, we do a lot of work in charter schools. And I think part of the problem that we find is that a lot of our families are not educated and knowledgeable about these things. There is less education around this. Parents are less involved, unfortunately, in our communities with this. And not because they may not want to be, but they have 3 or 4 jobs and they're just trying to make ends meet. And I can't get to the school today because I might lose my job. So I think there's a fine line because and a lot of our schools that we work with, if we don't diagnose them, they will not get the support they need. So that's something that we have to do, that we struggle with on a regular basis. If I don't give him this diagnosis of a learning disability, they're not going to give him the extra support that he needs to make it in school. And so that we as people of color, and in my practice, we're a base basically of color. We talk about this all the time and we struggle with this all the time. How do we draw that line? But I know this kid needs this help, and how is he going to get it if we don't do it in this way? But at the same time, we're very careful about, what we're recommending with regard to medications and things of that nature. But what I think it really boils down to is our parents need to be educated about what is going on with their kids. That's where the biggest problem, I think, is that our parents just don't have the wherewithal that I see a lot of the majority parents and how they handle their situations very differently.
So as a pediatrician, I really think I do get a disproportionately amount of boys of color who get referred for ADD. And people of color are socialized very differently than other races, and we just have to be honest about it. And so just getting parents to understand how your child is socialized, delving into the family, what's going on at home, that really helps, because sometimes you can catch a kid really early, help with the parents to manage the chaos at home so that their kids don't respond in that very hyperactive way. Educational system is, we want kids to line up and everybody look the same way, like a cookie cutter approach, and that doesn't work for everybody. And so really understanding. So when I get a referral, parents will come in and say, the teacher wants my child to be checked for ADHD or ADD. We have a conversation, and conversation really gets into some of the social issues, what's going on at home, and those kinds of issues.
Also, I think with regard to diagnosing ADHD, I actually, I definitely see that a lot. But I also think that it's important that families actually get their children evaluated versus just asking a few questions. A lot of times when they go to psychiatrists and I'm not to say that you do this, but sometimes pediatricians, they just ask questions. There's an extensive testing that we can do to actually help with actually figuring out if this is really ADHD versus just answering questions. If you ask, anybody if they, can sit still for an hour. No, I can't either. So there's a lot more involved in diagnosing these things that I think that our families need to be educated about. And sometimes they just get this questionnaire and they fill it out, and that's not enough.
Thank you. Hold on one second.
Since we're still on the topic, I just wanted to applaud you for bringing that up about parent engagement. And I wouldn't have normally shared, but I have a 7-year-old daughter, and she's dually exceptional. So she has hyperactivity, ADHD spectrum, but she's also highly gifted in the 99th percentile, and she's a young Mensa. So her IQ is 143. And she was, when her teachers were telling me, she wasn't sitting still and all of that, and I was just like, is it her color? Because she goes to a school that is 1% free and reduced lunch, if we all understand what that means. And then I decided to volunteer for the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. I was always at the school. I was volunteering, and I was in her class. I even researched online what a 504 plan was so they could put special accommodations in for her. Even she doesn't need it, but she needed me to be her advocate, which in a lot of our communities, we don't have that. Parents don't know where to go. If I did not work in the field that I worked in, I would have no idea where to research the information, how to get her tested for all of the different tests that she had, to know what was going on with her and know that she's brilliant, and instead of having them label her. So now they want to jump her like 2 classes, which I won't allow, but if I didn't stand firm, they would have put her in a box and try to give her medication, which she's not on. So I applaud you for mentioning that, and I really do think it's something that our parents in the community need to know more about and use their voice, because sometimes they don't even know that they have a voice.
Thank you. That was more of a statement, strong statement.
I read recently about how sugar affects kids in terms of how they react, and kind of leads into other issues like alcoholism. Is there a way, like my family, they call us, they just make fun of my family because we eat organic, all the other stuff, green leafy vegetables, and they, even when we have a brownie, like, oh, yeah, the Hendersons had a brownie. Is there a way to communicate that to the greater people, to, hey, I like to have chicken wings and everything else, but for the most part, to weed away from sugar and kind of all those effects? Is there a way that anybody here is seeing a way to communicate that information to our greater families? Because obviously we care about this over here. Any of you guys had success in communicating the importance of health in terms of our well-being, mental being, things of that sort?
Thank you. Dr. Christie?
So, eating food in the natural state is the most important thing for all of us to keep in mind. Processed food have chemicals that are made in the lab, and those chemicals affect us. So, I applaud you for doing what you're doing with your family, but you just have to start. The art of the start, you start, and hopefully somebody will catch the fire, right? So your kids, you probably have to talk to them before they go to school, so because they're going to be made fun of. Just give them some little quick lines that they could, rebuttal for their friends and at school, and just keep doing what you're doing. Yeah, but natural food is the most important.
And I was just going to add, in terms of helping other people come along and receive this message, I think modeling the behavior, and when you look good and you're feeling good, and I think people will start saying, man, you're looking pretty good. Like, how do you pull that off? You know what I mean? I do think people want to feel better. And if you can express to them how good you're feeling, then that may kind of bring them along. You know what I mean?
Thank you. I'm going to come up to this crowd in the back. You guys have been so nice tonight.
Good. How you doing? Hey, my name is Rodney Norwood. My question is for either one of you guys. With depression being in the forefront now, I mean, back in the day, I think we called, hey, if someone acted kind of off, you call them crazy or whatever. But how can I, as an individual, identify someone who's going through a depression state? Because sometimes people don't know they're in a depression state, and they can't get the help that they need. So how can I,
Well, I talked about some of the symptoms previously, but if you notice that someone is withdrawing, possibly from, their personality is changing, they may be becoming more withdrawn. If you see them, looking sad or losing weight, or just, they're not the person that you know them to be, you have to ask the questions because they may not recognize it as depression, as you said, but you do have to ask the question about, if you're asking them how they're feeling, and if they're telling you not like myself, or if you notice that, then those are some of the things that you you want to look for. Like I said, losing weight, sleeping more, or not not sleeping at all, gaining weight or losing weight, withdrawn, not having fun. They don't enjoy the things that they used to enjoy anymore. Irritability, that's another one. Yeah, mood swings, those are things that you might notice. Not being able to stay focused, staying on task. They have a difficult time, mind racing, things of that nature. Those are some of the symptoms. But I think asking the question directly, about how you're feeling is important. And then telling them, like, I said to a friend of mine, how you're doing, and I said to him, and not in the way that we normally ask, how you're doing. How are you really doing? And he told me he wasn't doing that well. And I got a whole lot from that, because I said to him, not in the generic way of how you're doing when I ask you, and I really don't care, but I really want to know how you are doing. And he told me how he was doing, and he wasn't doing that well.
And I just wanted to add to that too. What I find really helpful is to know what your baseline is. Meaning, if I normally am like a really good eater, if I'm not eating as much as I normally do, or if I'm overeating, then I know, okay, I'm getting a little off here, I need to pay attention. Or if I normally get, 8 hours of sleep a night, but now suddenly I don't want to get out of bed after 10 hours, I need to start paying attention to that. So everybody should really kind of know what their baseline is in terms of mood, in terms of appetite, in terms of sleep. And when you see major swings that are different from what your baseline is, that's a good sign. And then another thing that I want to point out for me, we all know the strong black woman, right? That was me. So when I was told that I had depression, I was like, oh, you got the wrong girl, not me. But what made me go to the doctor in the first place was not emotional stuff, it was physical stuff. I was having chest pains. I had ringing in my ears that wouldn't go away. I thought I was having a heart attack because my heart would start racing, and I had these tremendous chest pains. And I get this thing, I've since learned it's called, you would know that, globus, hyper something globus, I forget what it's called, but essentially it feels like, when you get that lump in your throat, I would get that a lot. And so I went to the doctor not because I was feeling down, but because I had all these physical manifestations. And when I got to the doctor, he said, you know what? Those are all signs of depression and anxiety. I was shocked. But there are physical manifestations of depression and anxiety. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you. We have time for a couple more questions. So hand up over here.
Just to piggyback on what you were just saying about the strong black woman, my question is more towards the strong black man and facing depression. And I would love your insights on that. I have a lot of friends, went to college with, successful now that we're in a particular age group, that we're older and what have you. You would think on the outside that they're happy, have everything they want. But if you dig a little bit deeper and find out, you see that it's way more problems there. And it's a lot of other situations that a lot of us in here are facing and don't even know it. So I would definitely love even more perspective, because I would love to go back to my boys if I see something, or if they see something in me that I don't even realize. So the insight on that.
Strong question. Good question.
There is this term that actually changed my life. It's called, I don't know if anybody's heard of John Henryism. Is anybody familiar with that? So it's a coping mechanism. So John Henry was, John Henry had a hammer, right? And he died trying to prove his self-worth. He he outworked everybody else on the railroad. I bring that up because John Henryism is a coping mechanism that I'm sure everybody in this room can relate to. With so many of us people of color, we feel so marginalized, and we get these big fancy jobs with these big fancy titles. Oftentimes we're the only person of color, in this position. And so sometimes we're trying to prove that we deserve a seat at this table. John Henryism is when we work ourselves into mental, emotional, physical disrepair because we're working so hard to prove our self-worth. And as you mentioned earlier, with black men in particular, vulnerability is just not something that you're comfortable, showing. But it's something that's so incredibly important. And when I speak to young people, I try to help them understand that vulnerability is courage. It's not a weakness. The people who are the most authentic and most transparent, we've talked about our experience with depression. I hope nobody looked down on us because of that. Hopefully you looked at us and thought, wow, that's brave that they shared that, right? So vulnerability is courage. It is strength. So I'm hoping that we can start reframing that within our community so that we can talk more about when we're feeling down. We can turn to our friends and say, hey, you know what? I need some support through this. This is really getting to me. But it's just, we've got to be more open. We've got to be more vulnerable. We've got to experience our feelings and share our feelings. Feelings aren't a weakness. Feelings are human. We've got to understand that and try to encourage our boys, in your case, or our girlfriends, that it's okay to express yourself and express your vulnerability. It just means you're human and that you're there for each other.
And I would say you be the person to step up and do that. You set the standard for your group of friends. I will use my own personal family as an example. I'm a psychologist, and there were still issues around going to therapy. And my brother, as a good example, I'm like, I need to talk to somebody about something. I don't believe in therapy. Okay. But you were quick to say, my sister, Dr. Mack, but you don't believe in what I do. Okay, how do you do that? So I pushed and I pushed and I pushed and I pushed. And I made it okay for him to want to go to therapy. You have to step up and make that okay for your group of friends. You have to be willing to be that person that's going to be okay with them coming to you and saying, questioning you and what's going on and asking those questions. Is something wrong with him? And yeah, I'm okay with you asking me that. I'm okay with you seeing my vulnerability. If you set that standard, they will follow. So you may have to be that person who steps out and sets that example.
Thank you. Time for 2 more questions. Got you 1 second. Hold on.
This is more of a comment than a question, but I just want to say along the lines what you said, and then piggybacking on what you said. I think in our community, it's also, we have to come to the realization that it's okay if you have to be on medication. So as a ped doctor, you know that when a kid does have ADHD, there's a part of their frontal brain that isn't fully developed. So I went through a lot with my son. I'll never forget his godmother saying to me, he doesn't need to be on meds. But at, I guess this was 1st or 2nd grade, and I was in a public charter school at that time in the 1st grade, so they paid for everything. I know people that pay $5,000 to get all the testing done, to see what's going on. They had a psychologist. I had to get a second opinion. I went to Georgetown, and he was diagnosed with ADHD with a tinge of anxiety. Maybe, and then I heard it was hereditary. I'm like, oh my God, was that me? But all I'm saying to say is, because he was very smart, I never wanted him to suffer in the academic portion and not get what he needed to get because he was so busy being distracted by his surroundings. And so I did put him on medication in the 2nd grade. In the 4th grade, He got into Sidwell Friends in Landon, and he's now at Sidwell Friends. He's in the 7th grade, and I've done the periods of let's try it without. 2 weeks without medication, everything went down. Inability to focus. He's on his math, last 2 scores, 64%. And I said, you know what, Monday, we're going back. He doesn't like taking it because he hears his friends who have ADHD don't take it, but that's them just saying they don't do it. We don't know what's really going on. But I got a lot of slack from not just his godmother, but at least 2 other people. Like, oh, he doesn't try these foods. I've done it all. But there's a portion of him that hasn't fully developed yet in his brain, and so he needs it. And just as some of you have taken meds for depression, I think it needs to be okay that we have to take meds for ADHD. And don't say it's a stigmatism of all black boys of color. I do agree that there probably are some incidences in some schools where they are grouped like that because the teachers can't handle it. But I will say we need to own and we need to get the testing and we need to be okay if that's what your child does need. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Last question.
Just want to change it up a little bit and talk about wealth. For most of us, you have a lot of people that maybe, ended their career, been in there for a long time, and then there's those who are starting a career. It's never too late, no matter how old you are, to save money and to get prepared, because I know tomorrow's not promised for us, but we actually have to save and prepare for it just in case we happen to be here. So for those who are thinking about wealth, for our wealth management expert, what are the other things that we should do to save money to buy instead of things that depreciate?
Well, the number one thing that depreciates and the fastest thing that depreciates is an automobile. You buy it, and the minute you take it off the lot, you've lost 20%. So that's something to think about. And you're right, you want to invest instead of buying things. You invest in, I like mutual funds because you don't have to think about it. And what a mutual fund does, it takes your dollar bill and spreads it across, numerous stocks. So you spread the risk. So that's an investment. The 2 things that everybody in the room, whether you're starting your career or in the middle of your career, is saving your money and buying real estate does not depreciate. Those are the 2 biggest things to do. So that now my friends are looking or thinking about, well, maybe the kids are gone and now it's time to downsize. So you want to get rid of you buy your house, that's an investment. And I don't know about the Midwest, but I do know that in DC, your money is safe. You might not have the hyperinflation, but your money is safe if you buy real estate in DC, the surrounding areas, Virginia, Montgomery County, Prince George's County. That is about the safest investment you can have, is buy a house for your family, and if you have a little bit more money, buy another house. It's simple. Your money is safe so that down the road, when it's time to think about retirement, you have something that you can cash out. I will say, I know on the physical side, everything is related, but the physical, the mental, financial, it's all related. It all feeds off of one another. One story, my family, I grew up, people would say, and not necessarily in my household, but black people can't afford to be depressed. You can't, shake it off. White people can do it. They can afford to take some time off, but black people can't afford. Maybe that's a good term. I will plagiarize that, Nikki, the John Henry-ism, but that's the way I was raised. Get to work. You graduated, my friends, finished college. They took 2 or 3 months off. My dad said, well, you got a week, that was, on the one hand, it was a good, strong work ethic, but that's how I was raised. You got a job, get to work, and so you can't afford to be depressed. You can't afford, to take time off. And I think, in just an old-fashioned, middle-class DC upbringing that I had, that was a philosophy. Not that there was a stigma, but get to work. You can't afford to take time off. So start investing now. Invest in your stocks. Invest in yourself, health-wise, mental-wise, and real estate-wise.
Thank you. Thank you. So I do want to close the panel discussion portion of tonight, but also open up the networking portion where you have an opportunity to meet the panelists, obviously network amongst yourself in this room. But before we do that, I do want to first, if you can help me, thank our sponsors. Secondly, thank our strategic partners. And most importantly, thank our panelists. So we have this area for the next 45 minutes, and on behalf of Catalyst Network Foundation, thank you for coming out tonight. Okay.